Good night, this is Fumi Sleepy Time Stories. Tonight's bedtime story is about to begin.
Once upon a time, in a village far away, there lived a miller who had a daughter. She was not only exceedingly beautiful, but also clever and quick-witted. So proud was the miller of his daughter that he never tired of boasting about her, praising her virtues to the skies wherever he went. One day, the miller was summoned to the royal court. While chatting idly with the king, he bragged that his daughter could spin straw into gold. Now the king was a man who loved riches above all else. The moment he heard this, his eyes gleamed with greed, and he immediately ordered that the girl be brought to the palace. Once she arrived, the king led her into a room filled from floor to ceiling with straw. There, he handed her a spinning wheel and said, "By dawn, you must have spun all this straw into gold. If you fail, you shall die." Though the girl tried to explain again and again that she had no such skill, and that it was all her father's. Foolish boasting, the king would hear none of it. He locked the door behind him and left her there alone. The girl sat in the room, staring at her cruel fate. Her heart sank, her face darkened with sorrow, and at last she burst into tears. At that moment, the door creaked open, and in hobbled a tiny little man. He looked odd and comical, and said in a cheerful voice, "Good evening, fair maiden. Why do you weep so bitterly?" "Oh," cried the girl, "I must spin all this straw into gold, but I don't know how. If I cannot finish it by morning, I shall surely die." "What will you give me," said the little man, "if I spin it for you?" "I will give you my lovely necklace," replied the girl. The little man agreed, took his place at the spinning wheel, and began to spin. Round and round the wheel turned, humming merrily as it worked. It didn't take long before every last bundle of straw was spun into glittering gold. At sunrise, the king returned. When he stepped into the room and saw the heaps of shining gold, he was astonished and overjoyed. But his heart grew even more greedy. He had the girl taken to another room, even larger and filled with more straw. Once again, he commanded her to spin it all into gold. Poor girl. Not knowing what to do, she sat down and began to weep once more. But just as before, the little man opened the door and came in. "What will you give me?" he asked. "If I spin this straw into gold for you, I will give you this diamond ring," said the girl. The little man took the ring, sat down at the wheel, and spun all night long. By dawn, the entire room was filled with golden thread. The king was more pleased than ever when he saw it, but his greed knew no bounds. He led the girl to an even bigger room, filled with straw, and said, "If you spin all this into gold tonight, I shall make you my queen." With that, the king left. Once again, the girl was alone, and once again, the little man appeared. He asked, "And what will you give me this time, if I spin the straw into gold?" "I have nothing left to give you," the girl said sadly. "Then you must promise me," said the little man, "that when you become queen, you will give me your firstborn child." The girl was horrified and thought, "That I cannot do," but she had no other choice, and so she agreed. Once again, The little man sat at the wheel and spun all the straw into gold. The next morning, the king came and was overjoyed to find the task completed. True to his word, he married the miller's daughter, and she became queen. Time passed, and the queen gave birth to her first child, a beautiful, healthy baby. She rejoiced and forgot all about her promise. But one day, the little man appeared in her chamber and reminded her of the deal. The queen was heartbroken. In despair, she offered him all the treasures in the kingdom if he would leave her child. But the little man refused. Nothing could sway him. The queen wept bitterly. Tears streamed down her face like a waterfall. Seeing her sorrow, the little man's heart softened a little. He said, "Very well, I will give you 3 days. If within that time you can guess my name, you may keep your child." The queen immediately sent messengers across the land to search for every name under the sun. The next day, the little man returned. The queen began listing every name she could think of. "Is your name Dims, Benjamin, Jeremias?" But each time, the little man laughed and said, "No, that's not my name." On the second day, the queen tried all the silly names the messengers had gathered. Crooked Leg, Hunchback, Duckfoot. But the little man only replied, "That is not my name." At last came the third and final day. One messenger returned with a strange story. "While I was climbing the mountain, I came upon a little hut in the forest. In front of it burned a fire, and a curious little man was dancing around it on one foot. As he hopped, he sang, 'Today I brew, tomorrow I bake, the next day the queen's child I take. The queen may search both far and wide, but Rumpelstiltskin is my name with pride.' The queen leapt with joy. A short while later, the little man came once more and asked, 'Well, your majesty, have you guessed my name?' 'Is it John?' she asked. 'No.' 'Is it Tom?' 'No' again. 'Then perhaps,' she said with a smile, 'your name is Rumpelstiltskin?' 'You must have heard it from a witch. A witch must have told you,' the little man cried in fury. He stamped his foot so hard that it sank deep into the floor. Then, in his rage, he grabbed his leg with both hands and tugged until he finally pulled it free. With that, he hurried out of the palace and vanished. He was never seen again, and the queen lived happily ever after.